Good morning, I'm Connor Johnson. Individual rights are an important thing to all Americans and are a big reason why this nation formed in the first place. There's still controversy over rights, especially with the First Amendment to this day. The First Amendment, according to the Constitution, protects the freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and the right to petition. This controversy has led me to question how are the limitations of students' rights an illustration of the First Amendment in United States public schools. I came up with the answer that the First Amendment is limited in public schools in order to prevent distractions and protect students from violence. There are multiple types of distractions that can take place in school, one of which is obscene language. First Amendment schools refers to the Bethel School District v. Frazier court case to explain this limitation. The issue at hand in this case is that Matthew Frazier, a high school student, gave a speech containing numerous sexual references in school. After being disciplined by the school, he argued that the school was violating his freedom of speech. The ruling ended up being that it was appropriate of the school to prohibit vulgar and offensive terms in public discourse. Obscene language can be disruptive to the learning environment, therefore public schools do have the right to limit it to prevent obscene language. Clothing, which is a form of expression, is another example of a distraction in schools. According to Scott Bomboy of the National Constitution Center, public schools can enforce dress codes to a certain extent. Public schools can ban clothing encouraging aggressive or disruptive actions, as well as determine the length of skirts that can be worn. An example of clothing that encourages aggressive behavior would be clothing with drug or gang references, and school officials can determine the length of shorts, skirts, and force students to cover their shoulders to prevent distractions. In addition to the prevention of distractions, a Harvard Law Review on the Doninger v. Nyhoff court case says that schools can prohibit violent expression in order to protect students from violence. In this case, Avery Doninger, a student of Lewis Mills High School, made blog posts and comments outside of school insulting teachers and administrators, as well as encouraging other students to anger those teachers. After being punished by the school, she argued that her freedom of expression was violated. District Judge Kravitz ended up ruling that her speech was foreseeable to lead to violence in school and can be disciplined. Although this example occurred off of campus, the same ruling applies to speech that takes place on school grounds. The article Tinker v. Des Moines Independent School District discusses the possible counterclaim that students can always freely express themselves in public schools. This is because the Supreme Court ruled in favor of John and Mary Beth Tinker, who were wearing black armbands to express their political views on the Vietnam War. However, Justice Stewart and Justice Black stated that students are not always guaranteed the full extent of the First Amendment and cannot express any opinion at any time. This proves that the First Amendment can be limited in public schools. This research and evidence shows the implications of limiting the First Amendment, which is increased safety of the students and greater performance within the school. Thank you. What are your questions?
I have two questions for you. First up, was there evidence that you gathered that you didn't use, and then why didn't you use it?
Yeah, I gathered evidence from the time, place, manner restriction article, and I didn't use it because its information was more general on how the First Amendment could be limited, and I wanted to use more specific examples.
All right, and explain what level of certainty you have about your solution to the issue.
I'm certain of my solution because it was backed up by all the sources I used. And also I addressed the counterclaim with the Justice Stewart and Justice Black opinions after the Tinker v. Des Moines case.
Thank you, sir.